A single night, a stolen heirloom, a connection neither of them can explain. Years later, a powerful CEO searching for the truth crosses paths with a determined young mother fighting to protect her child. What starts as curiosity will unravel into secrets, betrayals, and a love story neither of them saw coming. Sit back, breathe deep, and prepare yourself for a journey of love found against all odds, secrets that can destroy empires, and the kind of justice that makes your heart pound. This isn't just a story, it's a fight for family, for truth, and for a happily ever after worth every battle. The hospital room was quiet except for the slow, uneven beeps of the heart monitor. Daniel Wilson stood beside the bed, trying not to let his emotions show. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and strikingly handsome, with deep brown eyes that usually held confidence but now were clouded with pain. His sharp jawline and perfectly tailored suit made him look every bit the billionaire CEO he was. But in that moment, he was just a son watching his father fade away. With weak hands, his father unclasped a gold wristwatch from his wrist. The metal caught the faint light gleaming in the dim room. "Daniel," his father said in a fading voice, "this watch has been passed down in our family for 3 generations. It is not just gold, it is a promise. Protect the company, and protect our name." Daniel swallowed hard and nodded. "I will, Dad." Minutes later, his father closed his eyes for the last time. That evening, Daniel sat in his car outside the Grand Imperial Hotel, debating whether to go inside. The loss of his father still felt like a fresh wound, and the thought of smiling for business partners felt unbearable. He didn't want to be there. Not tonight. Not when the grief was still sitting heavy in his chest. But this meeting had been planned for months, and the stakes were too high for Empire Group to ignore. Pulling himself together, he walked into the lavishly lit ballroom. Every handshake, every polite smile felt like an effort. The room buzzed with chatter, but Daniel moved through it like a shadow. In the corner, a server placed a glass of wine on the table before him, smooth, red, and tainted. He didn't know it yet, but every sip pulled him deeper into a haze. Across the hotel, Olivia, a 22-year-old law student, was leaving the library after a late study session. She had been invited to a small networking event by a friend, but the moment she arrived, she felt the wrong kind of attention on her. A man she barely knew blocked her path in the hallway. "Come on, just a drink," he pressed. When she refused, his hand gripped her arm a little too tightly. She yanked away, heart pounding, and ran down the corridor, not caring which way she went. The carpeted hallways all looked the same. In desperation, she pushed open the nearest door and slipped inside. The suite smelled faintly of cologne and expensive liquor. A tall, broad-shouldered man stood by the window, his movements unsteady. His eyes were sharp but unfocused. Daniel Wilson, though Olivia had no idea who he was. Even in his disoriented state, there was something magnetic about him. His neatly styled dark hair framed a face that looked like it belonged on a magazine cover, though now it was shadowed with exhaustion and grief. He looked like he was trying to speak, but the words slurred. "You shouldn't be here," he mumbled. Olivia glanced behind her. The hallway was empty now, but she could still feel the danger lingering out there. "I'm sorry, I just needed somewhere safe for a moment," she said softly. Daniel stumbled, and she instinctively rushed forward, catching his arm before he could fall. His skin was warm, too warm. "I think someone put something in my drink," he muttered, his voice weakening. She helped him to the bed, meaning only to let him rest until help could come. But somewhere between her worry and his confusion, the room spun into a blur. Neither of them remembered the rest clearly. There were broken flashes, shadows moving, the soft weight of someone's hand, the quiet hum of the city outside the window. Morning light spilled across the room. Olivia woke. Her head felt heavy, her body strange. She turned, and the bed beside her was empty. Only the gold wristwatch lay on the pillow, gleaming in the sun. She picked it up slowly. It was heavy in her palm, expensive, and carried a sense of importance she couldn't explain. She looked around the empty suite one last time. Whoever he was gone. Clutching the watch, she left the room, not knowing that this one night would change both their lives forever. Olivia couldn't shake the weight of that gold watch in her palm. As she walked home from the hotel that morning, her mind was cloudy, her heart unsettled. She didn't know who that man was or why he had left without a word. All she knew was that her life felt slightly shifted, though she couldn't explain why. Days passed. She went back to her studies, pushing that night to the back of her mind. But weeks later, when the morning sickness began, the memory forced its way back. At first, she thought it was just stress. Law school wasn't easy, and she'd been running herself ragged. But when she missed her second period, she bought a pregnancy test. The two pink lines stared back at her, and her breath caught in her throat. She didn't cry at first. She just sat there in her tiny apartment, holding the test, her mind spinning. She didn't even know his name. She could barely remember his face through the haze of that night. Only flashes of strong shoulders, a deep voice, and grief in his eyes. That evening, she decided to tell her stepsister Lillian. Lillian was older by 3 years, sharp-tongued and always carrying herself like life owed her something. Their parents had died when they were still teenagers, leaving them to rely on each other. Or at least, Olivia liked to think so. When Olivia broke the news, Lillian stared at her, lips pursed. "You don't even know who the father is?" Olivia shook her head, embarrassed. Lillian gave a tight smile. "Well, I suppose we only have each other now. But you know, our father always liked you more. Maybe that's why you think you can handle everything yourself." Olivia frowned at the strange jab, but brushed it off. "We're all we have, Lillian. I don't want us to fight." A few days later, Lillian came home looking pale and anxious. "It's Tony," she said, wringing her hands. "He's in trouble. He lost everything gambling. Now he's threatening to hurt me if I don't give him money." Olivia froze at the name. "Lillian, Tony has never been any good. He's always been bad news, and you know it." "I know," Lillian said quickly, eyes pleading. "But this is the last time. I swear I'll break up with him after this. I'll leave him for good." Olivia hesitated, then sighed and went to her drawer, pulling out a small envelope of her savings, barely enough to last her a month. She handed it over without a second thought. Lillian's eyes darted to Olivia's bag as she took the money. "Thank you," she murmured, though her voice held no real warmth. That night, while Olivia slept, Lillian quietly opened her sister's drawer again. Her eyes fell on the gold wristwatch, the one Olivia had kept hidden since the hotel. She picked it up, turning it over in her hand. The weight, the shine, it screamed expensive. "This will solve my problems," she whispered to herself. By morning, the watch was gone. Lillian had pawned it for cash without a shred of guilt. Months passed. Olivia's pregnancy wasn't easy. She attended classes until she couldn't anymore, hiding her growing belly under loose clothes. When the labor pains finally came, there was no family in the hospital waiting room. No Lillian. No one. She gave birth to a beautiful, healthy baby girl alone in the cold, sterile delivery room. The nurse placed the tiny bundle in her arms. Olivia looked down into her daughter's dark, searching eyes. "Hello, Elora," she whispered. "It's just you and me now." And just like that, days turned into months. Life as a single mother was nothing like Olivia had imagined. Her days blurred into endless routines, feeding Elora, working odd jobs, falling asleep with exhaustion, only to wake up and start again. Money was always tight. Rent was a constant shadow over her head. There were nights she skipped dinner so her baby could have enough formula. She bounced from waitressing to part-time clerical work, sometimes cleaning houses on weekends just to keep going. But no matter how tired she was, Olivia never let Elora feel unloved. Every night she would hold her close and whisper, "I promise, one day it will be better." Meanwhile, Lillian's life had taken its own turn. After pawning the gold watch, she had gone straight back to Tony. Despite all his lies and failures, she convinced herself he was all she had. For a while, things seemed stable between them until she found out she was pregnant. When she told Tony, he didn't even pretend to care. "That's your problem," he said before disappearing from her life completely. Lillian was left to raise her son Junior on her own. At first, she told herself she could manage, but as the years passed and bills piled up, she began to feel the walls closing in. She thought about going back to Olivia, but pride kept her away. While these two sisters lived their separate struggles, Daniel Wilson was still searching. 6 years had passed since that strange night at the hotel. 6 years since the woman with soft eyes and steady hands had saved him and vanished with his father's watch. The search had become personal. He had people tracking pawn shops, auction houses, anything that might lead him to that watch. And to her. One morning, his head of security stepped into his office. "Sir, we've spotted the watch. It was sold years ago, but recently bought back from a pawn shop." Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Find that woman. She saved my life that night. And she's also my future wife." It didn't take long for word to spread in the city. The handsome billionaire CEO of Empire Group was looking for a woman linked to a very valuable watch. Lillian overheard the gossip at a cafe where she had gone on a date with an older man, her ears instantly perking up. Handsome billionaire, Empire Group, missing watch. Her pulse quickened. She remembered that watch, the same one she had stolen from Olivia all those years ago. She had gone back and paid some money to retrieve it just recently. She had wanted to give it back to Olivia, but not anymore. Not after knowing who the watch really belonged to. Without hesitation, she went back to the pawn shop and bought it back with the money she got from her date. Holding it in her hands again, she felt a rush of greed and determination. "This time," she whispered to herself, "my sister doesn't get to keep the good stuff while I suffer." She smiled, already picturing herself standing next to Daniel Wilson, the world believing she was the mysterious woman he had been searching for. 3 days later, the Starlight Hotel was buzzing that afternoon with a corporate charity event. Daniel Wilson moved through the marble-floored lobby, his sharp suit and commanding presence drawing discreet glances from guests and staff alike. He was here for business, but his mind, as it had been for years, kept drifting back to the mystery woman and the gold watch. 6 years of unanswered questions, 6 years of imagining her face, wondering if she was real or just a hazy memory. As he stepped into the grand hall, something caught his attention. A little girl stood by the reception desk, swinging her legs slightly as she waited. Her hair was tied in a neat ponytail, her dress simple but tidy. But it wasn't her clothes that froze Daniel in his tracks. It was her face. The shape of her eyes, the curve of her jaw, the way her smile seemed both shy and bold at the same time. And then he saw it. The small, distinct birthmark on her neck. The same birthmark every firstborn in his family had carried for generations. The girl noticed him looking and beamed. "You're so handsome," she said brightly, her voice clear and confident. "Just like the dad I always imagine." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. "Your dad, you imagine?" he repeated, his voice gentle. She nodded innocently. "I don't have a dad, so I just think about what he'd be like. And you look exactly like him." Daniel's curiosity deepened. He studied her, every detail, his mind racing. Could it be? She waved to someone across the lobby. "Mom!" she called. Daniel's gaze followed hers, and the world seemed to tilt. Standing near the entrance, dressed in a simple blouse and skirt, was Olivia, the woman who had haunted his thoughts for 6 years, the one from that night. But he didn't know that yet. Daniel moved before he could think, closing the space between them. "Do I know you from somewhere?" he asked, his eyes locked on hers. Olivia froze, her hand tightening on the strap of her bag. "I don't think so," she said quietly. "We've never met." His eyes flickered to the child, then back to her. "And her father?" A brief shadow crossed Olivia's face. "It was a mistake I've lived with." The words hit harder than he expected. For a long moment, they stood in the lobby, neither speaking. Finally, Olivia took Elora's hand and turned away. Daniel remained rooted to the spot, his thoughts spinning. The birthmark. The resemblance. The way the girl had looked at him. He left the hotel that day with more questions than answers, and a gnawing feeling that this was only the beginning. He sat at the back of his car as the driver pulled away from the Starlight Hotel with the image of the little girl burned into his mind. Her voice echoed in his memory. "You're so handsome, just like the dad I always imagine." The way she tilted her head when she spoke. And that birthmark. It couldn't all be coincidence. He remembered the mother's guarded tone when she said it was a mistake, almost as if she herself didn't know who the father was. Could it be possible that she didn't even remember what he looked like from that night. The thought unsettled him. Back at his office, Daniel found himself staring out of his window, the city skyline stretching before him but his mind far away. The girl's face kept overlapping with fragments of his own childhood photos. She's about 6. The timing fits. He called for his assistant. John, I need you to discreetly find out more about a woman and her daughter, about 6 or 5 years old child. John raised an eyebrow. Do you think? I don't know. Daniel cut in, his voice low. But if she's mine, I need to know the truth. For the next few days, Daniel kept his distance but quietly observed. He learned the girl's name, Elora. He noticed her quick smile, the way she carried herself with confidence beyond her years. And every time he caught a glimpse of that small birthmark, his certainty grew stronger. But he wasn't the only one paying attention. Lillian had been nursing her own struggles. Raising Junior alone was harder than she had ever admitted to anyone. But when she overheard a conversation at a market stall, whispers that Daniel Wilson, the billionaire CEO of Empire Group, was asking questions about a child, her interest sharpened instantly. If Daniel was looking for a child to be his heir, why shouldn't it be her son? She studied Junior's face and decided the resemblance could be improved. She bought a small branding tool and one afternoon pressed it gently against the skin of his neck, leaving a faint scar shaped like the Wilson family birthmark. Junior cried in confusion, but Lillian hushed him with promises. This is for your future. One day, you'll thank me. The next step in her plan was more daring. She dug out the gold wristwatch she had retrieved from the pawn shop and rehearsed her story in front of the mirror. She would become the mysterious woman from that night, the one Daniel had been searching for. And she would convince him that Junior was his son, the one and only heir to Empire Group. Her lips curved into a cold smile. This time, Olivia won't get the good life. This time, it's mine. After her late-night rehearsal, Lillian woke early the next morning, dressed carefully, and polished the gold wristwatch until it gleamed. She looked at herself in the mirror one last time, smoothing her hair and practicing the perfect mix of confidence and vulnerability. This is it, she whispered. Time to take what should have been mine. She made her way to Empire Holdings headquarters, where she used the watch as her entry ticket. When security asked her business, she simply smiled. Tell Mr. Wilson I have something he's been looking for. It didn't take long before she was escorted to the Wilson family mansion. Inside, the air carried the quiet weight of wealth, high ceilings, polished floors, and the faint scent of fresh flowers. Daniel entered the room, his expression unreadable. Sitting nearby was Madame Amanda Wilson, Daniel's mother, an elegant woman whose sharp eyes missed nothing. You asked to see me, Daniel said simply. Lillian placed the watch carefully on the table between them. This belonged to your father, didn't it? I think you already know what this means. Daniel's jaw tightened. I already believe I've found my child. Lillian didn't hesitate. Then I'm here to tell you, you're wrong. I don't know who is trying to manipulate you, but whoever you found is not your child. She leaned forward, lowering her voice as if sharing a painful truth. I'm the woman from that night 6 years ago, and this, she gestured toward the hallway where a small boy peeked in shyly, is your son, Junior, the rightful heir to Empire Group. Madame Amanda Wilson looked startled. Are you certain? I have the watch, Lillian said firmly, and I have my son. That should be enough. When she left the mansion, her pulse was racing. She felt she had played her role well, but Daniel's cool, guarded stare stayed in her mind. As she walked toward the gate, a man in a tailored gray suit stepped out from the shadows. Fred, Daniel's cousin. His smile didn't reach his eyes. You know, you might actually be useful, he said quietly. Lillian tilted her head. Useful? If you marry into this family, Fred continued, you'll have influence. Influence I can use. I'll support your story, make sure Daniel accepts it, but in return, you help me gain control of the company. Lillian considered it for only a second before nodding. Deal. Meanwhile, Daniel wasn't convinced. Something about Lillian's story didn't sit right with him. He remembered the way the little girl at the Starlight Hotel had smiled at him, something he didn't feel with the little boy that had just left his mansion, and also how the mother had avoided his questions. But he said nothing. Instead, he stayed cautious, keeping Elora under quiet observation, determined to find out the truth no matter what Lillian claimed. While Daniel wrestled with questions, trying to figure out which child was truly his, and while Lillian quietly tightened the strings of her scheme, Olivia's own life was sliding into another storm. She had finally graduated from law school after years of balancing classes, motherhood, and part-time jobs. The diploma on her small apartment wall felt like proof she had survived it all. But the victory was bittersweet. Weeks had passed, and not a single law firm had called her back. Her savings, already thin, were shrinking fast. One evening, her landlord knocked on her door, his tone curt. "Miss, I've been patient, but you're 3 months behind on rent. You and your daughter need to make arrangements to leave by the end of the week." Olivia's heart sank. She'd been juggling bills, feeding Elora, and paying off debts from her studies. She had nothing left to offer him but apologies. That night, she called Martha, her closest friend from school. Martha was the kind of friend who always answered, even in the middle of the night. They had met during their second year of law school, two young women trying to make it in a world that never seemed to have space for them. "Martha, I'm so sorry to ask this." Olivia's voice wavered. "Elora and we don't have anywhere to stay." There was no hesitation on the other end. "Pack your things and come here. You're not sleeping in the street while I have a spare room." By the next day, Olivia and Elora were in Martha's cozy 2-bedroom apartment. It wasn't large, but it was warm and smelled faintly of cinnamon from the tea Martha always brewed. For the first time in days, Olivia felt a small weight lift off her chest, but she knew she couldn't stay forever. She started selling off the few things she had of value, clothes she no longer wore, a small set of jewelry from her mother, even her old textbooks, anything to raise money for Elora's school fees and, eventually, a place of their own. Elora noticed the emptying bags and boxes. "Mommy, are we going to be okay?" Olivia knelt beside her, brushing her daughter's cheek. "We're going to be fine, my love. Mommy just has to work a little harder." A few days into staying at Martha's apartment, Olivia sat at the small kitchen table, laptop open, scrolling through job listings for what felt like the 100th time. She had sent out countless applications with no luck, but that morning, something caught her eye. Empire Group legal assistant position. Her heart skipped. Empire Group was one of the most prestigious and largest companies in the city. Everyone knew they didn't hire just anyone, especially not without connections. Still, she took a deep breath, updated her CV, and sent her application. 2 days later, her phone rang. "This is HR from Empire Group. We reviewed your application, and we're pleased to offer you the position." Olivia's mouth fell open. Thank you. Thank you so much." She ran into the living room where Martha was folding laundry. "Martha, I got the job." Martha's eyes widened in surprise. "Empire Group? Olivia, do you know how impossible that is without knowing someone inside? That's a blessing." "I know," Olivia said softly, emotion catching in her throat. "It's been so long since something good happened. I'm so thankful to God right now." On her first morning, Olivia woke early, laying out her best outfit and packing Elora's small backpack. With no childcare arrangements yet, she had no choice but to bring her daughter along. The headquarters of Empire Group was a towering glass structure that seemed to shine in the morning sun. Inside, the lobby gleamed with marble floors and gold accents. Olivia felt small but determined. The first person she met was Mr. Adams, the cold, impeccably dressed office manager. His eyes swept over Elora and then back to Olivia with visible disapproval. "This is not a daycare," he said flatly. Before Olivia could respond, he gestured toward the corner. "Keep her out of the way, and make sure she doesn't touch anything important." Some of the staff looked on, whispering and smirking. By mid-morning, Elora had been asked to bring tea to a few desks and even help clean up some folders that had accidentally been spilled on the floor. When one of the staff made a sarcastic remark about her working hard already, Elora stood straight and said, "My mom is the smartest lawyer I know. You should be nice to her. The response was cruel laughter. She and her bastard child have no place in this company, one lady said under her breath, loud enough for Olivia to hear. They're better off begging in the streets. Can't believe the hiring standards have gotten this low. Olivia felt the sting of the words but kept her composure. Come on, Elora, she said gently, ignoring the taunts. From across the room, Daniel leaned against the glass wall of his office, his eyes locked on the scene unfolding. He said nothing, but he saw everything. The office was nearly empty by the time Olivia finished her first day at Empire Group. Most of the staff had gone home hours earlier, leaving the floor quiet except for the hum of the cleaning machines. She had been asked to tidy up some files before leaving, and she didn't mind. She needed to make a good first impression. Elora trailed beside her, clutching her small backpack. They were almost at the lobby when Olivia turned a corner and bumped straight into someone. Her papers scattered to the floor. I'm so sorry, she began, bending down to gather them. A tall figure stood before her, sharply dressed in a dark suit. His presence seemed to pull the air out of the room. Before she could place him, Daniel's assistant John stepped forward, frowning. Watch where you're going, he said sharply, moving as if to guide her out of the way. But Daniel raised a hand. It's fine, John. Elora's eyes lit up in recognition. Handsome uncle, she blurted, smiling brightly. Daniel looked down at her, amused. We meet again. Olivia froze. So he's the man from the hotel lobby, the one she was trying to forget. Daniel extended his hand politely. Daniel Wilson, CEO of Empire Group. Olivia's breath caught. She shook his hand slowly, feeling the weight of the moment. Olivia Brown. Over the next few weeks, they crossed paths several times in the building, brief encounters in the elevator, passing greetings in the hallway. One afternoon, Daniel called her into his office. I had my team look into something, he said, his voice even. You've been struggling to keep up with your daughter's school fees. Olivia stiffened. I didn't come here for charity, Mr. Wilson. This isn't charity, he replied calmly. It's because I like her. He glanced at Elora, who was waiting by the door, happily humming to herself. She's smart, she's brave, and she deserves more than what the system is giving her. She should be in school by this time. Olivia hesitated, but eventually nodded. If it's really for her, I'll accept. Within a week, Elora was enrolled in one of the city's most prestigious schools, the kind where children arrived in chauffeur-driven cars. At first, Elora was excited, but it didn't take long for the whispers to start. Some of the wealthier kids mocked her modest clothes. Then, one afternoon, a boy from one of the richest families slipped a small bottle into her school bag. When the principal found it, his face hardened. This is unacceptable. She must be expelled immediately. Olivia arrived within the hour, her eyes blazing. You have no proof she put that in her bag. This is slander, and according to school policy, the principal cut her off with a mocking laugh. English law terms have no place here, madam. This is a school for the children of the rich. You're just a poor single mother. Know your place. The door opened and Daniel walked in. Interesting choice of words, he said, his tone cold. Mr. Wilson, the principal stammered. This school, Daniel said slowly, belongs to Empire Group. The child stays. He set a tablet on the desk and tapped the screen. The CCTV footage showed the wealthy boy slipping the bottle into Elora's bag. The principal's face turned pale. The bully is expelled, Daniel said flatly. And as for you, his gaze sharpened. I don't like adults who target children just because they don't fit into your idea of rich. You're fired. As they left the office, Elora looked up at Daniel. Thank you, handsome uncle. He gave her a small smile. You don't have to thank me. Just keep being yourself. As they stepped out of the school gates, Olivia's hands were still trembling. The scene in the principal's office had left her shaken, not just from the cruelty of the accusations, but from the fact that someone had finally stood up for her and Elora without asking for anything in return. She turned to Daniel. I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to get involved like that. Daniel met her gaze steadily. I wanted to. No child should be treated that way. There was something in his voice, something warmer than simple courtesy. Olivia nodded, a small but genuine smile breaking through. Still, thank you. Over the next days, Daniel found himself thinking about them more than he intended. The little girl's quick wit, the way she reminded him of his younger self, and Olivia, steady, strong, holding her dignity no matter how much life seemed to push her down. The thought kept circling back. Could Elora be mine? One morning, Daniel called John into his office. "I want you to quietly collect a strand of Elora's hair and run a DNA test." John nodded, but neither of them realized Fred was watching from the corner of the hallway. By the time the results came back, Fred had already swapped them for a fake report. The paper now claimed there was no match. Daniel stared at it for a long moment, the result gnawing at his instincts. Something still felt wrong. Days later, Lillian returned to the mansion with Junior, holding herself with false confidence. "Daniel, I'm ready for you to see the truth," she announced. "Let's do the DNA test. I'll prove Junior is your real son." Daniel agreed. But what Lillian didn't tell him was that she had secretly taken a strand of Elora's hair, not Junior's, and handed it in for testing. When the results came back positive, Daniel was left with a strange twist of emotions. On paper, Junior was his. And yet, he found himself drawn more to Elora's presence than to Junior's. The boy was distant, while Elora was open, curious, and warm. Something deep in his gut told him the truth wasn't as simple as the papers claimed. When Lillian later asked, "So, when will Junior and I move into the mansion?" Daniel didn't hesitate. "I'll take care of you both financially," he said evenly. "You won't lack anything. But I'm not interested in you in that way." Her smile faltered. "You mean you don't want us living here?" "I mean," Daniel said firmly, "I will support you, but I won't lie to you or to myself." Later, alone in her apartment, Lillian's hands shook as she poured herself a drink. She cursed Olivia's name under her breath. "This is her fault," she hissed. "Always getting in my way, always taking what should have been mine." Her eyes narrowed as she leaned back in her chair. "Fine. If Daniel likes her so much, I'll make sure he hates her just as much." The very next morning, Lillian dialed Fred's number. "It's time," she said coldly. Within hours, the two of them were sitting across from Mr. Adams in a quiet cafe. Fred leaned back in his chair. "You know what they say about the enemy of my enemy. I believe we have a mutual one, and we need her career gone, permanently. Make her fail so badly that she never steps foot in Empire Group again." Lillian slid a slim envelope across the table. $5 million. Consider it a down payment. Mr. Adams smirked. "Done." The next day, Olivia arrived at the office to find a thick file waiting on her desk. Mr. Adams stood over her with a look of fake sympathy. "This," he said, "is your new assignment. The most complicated case on our books. You'll need to handle it alone. Deadline's in 3 days." Olivia blinked. "Sir, this case is well above my position. Shouldn't—" "I'm sure you'll manage," Mr. Adams interrupted, before walking away. What they didn't expect was that Olivia's years of struggle had made her sharper than most lawyers in the building. She stayed up through the nights, cross-referencing every document, building a flawless argument. By the third day, she walked into the boardroom and delivered her case with quiet confidence. The senior partners were impressed, and so was Daniel, who had been observing from the back of the room. Afterward, he found her in the hallway. "That was brilliant," he said, his eyes warm with something unspoken. From across the room, Lillian watched them, her jaw tightening. A week later, Elora bounced into the living room holding a colorful flyer. "Mommy, there's going to be a 3-legged race at school and I want to join, but—" She hesitated. "It says both parents have to be there." Olivia's heart pinched. "Sweetheart, can you ask Mr. Daniel to be my pretend dad for the day?" Elora's eyes were wide and hopeful. "Just for the race, please." The next afternoon, Daniel showed up at the school, dressed casually for the first time Olivia had seen. When she arrived, she froze for a moment, stunned to see him standing beside Elora, already helping her tie the race-band around her ankle. "You didn't have to—" she began. "She asked," Daniel replied simply, glancing at her. "And I don't say no to her." They stood side by side at the starting line. The whistle blew and they stumbled forward, laughing despite themselves. For a brief moment, Olivia felt something. Not just gratitude, but a warmth she hadn't felt in years.
Don't be foolish, she told herself. He's a billionaire. You're a single mother. Two different worlds. After the event, long after Daniel had left for urgent business, just as Olivia was walking away with Elora, Lillian appeared, her smile tight. You think you're clever, don't you? She hissed, using seduction to get close to him, to get your child into his life. Olivia stiffened. That's not what this is. You're just like your mother, Lillian spat, always reaching above your place. Before Olivia could respond, Elora stepped in front of her, her small hands balled into fists.
Don't talk to my mom like that. She's smarter and kinder than you'll ever be. Get out of my way, you little bastard. Lillian's lips curled in disgust before she stormed off. That night, back in their small apartment, Olivia sat quietly after putting Elora to bed. She thought about Lillian's words and the strange twist of fate that had brought Daniel into their lives again. How did my sister end up with his child? She murmured to herself. But then she shook her head. She's capable of anything. Better to just focus on my own life and problems. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't adding up. The next afternoon at Empire Group, Olivia was buried in her work when her phone buzzed. It was a call from the school. Before she could answer, a commotion erupted outside. Daniel was striding through the hallway, his face dark with urgency. Come with me, he said shortly. They drove straight to the school's private campus, where staff were gathered near a decorative pond in the courtyard. Without hesitation, Daniel stepped forward, tossing his jacket aside, and jumped straight into the pond. He lifted Elora into his arms, water dripping from both of them, before climbing out with firm, protective hands. Olivia rushed forward, dropping to her knees, visibly shaken. Baby, what happened? I was just looking at the fish, Elora said quietly. Then someone came behind me and pushed me. Daniel's jaw tightened as he turned to the school's head of security. Get the surveillance footage, now. Minutes later, the truth played out on the screen, Mr. Adams clearly shoving Elora into the water and walking away without a second glance. Daniel's voice was like ice. Blacklist this man from every major company in the city and fire him immediately for endangering a child. Get him arrested too. He personally drove Olivia and Elora to the Wilson family's private hospital. The doctors fussed over her, but Elora soon began smiling again, safe and warm in her hospital bed. Olivia sat beside her, her eyes wet. Thank you for standing with us. You didn't have to do any of these things for us, but you did, she whispered to Daniel. He looked at her, really looked at her, and realized his feelings were no longer just about curiosity or obligation. Something deeper had taken root. That night, after Olivia had stepped out to get food, Daniel called John into the hallway. Take a hair sample from Elora, he said quietly. Run a DNA test. Don't tell anyone. 2 days later, the results landed on his desk. He opened the file slowly, and there it was, Elora Brown, biological daughter of Daniel Wilson. Daniel sat back, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. So, she really is mine. I just knew it. But his relief was tangled with confusion. If Elora was his, then how was Junior supposedly his too? The only explanation made his stomach turn. He looked at John. Keep this between us for now. Not a word to anyone, especially Olivia. I need to know if she's been keeping this from me. And I need to find out what game Lillian is playing. He stared out of the hospital window, the question gnawing at him. Did I somehow have twins? Or has someone been lying to me from the start? Days passed after the hospital incident, but Daniel's mind never strayed far from Elora. Now that he knew she was his daughter, he had to fight the urge to tell her immediately, to tell the whole world, but he held back. Someone had known she was his before he did, and they had tried to drown her. The thought made his blood boil. If he announced her identity now, he could be putting her in even greater danger. For now, his excitement would remain locked behind a calm expression. Instead, Daniel turned his attention to Lillian. If Elora was his, then Junior's place in his life needed to be questioned. He hired a private investigator, and within days the reports began trickling in. Inconsistencies in Lillian's timeline, forged documents, and finally, the most damning evidence of all, the birthmark on Junior's neck was fake. A branding iron had been used. Daniel's jaw clenched as the last piece clicked into place.
She's been lying from the start. The confrontation came swiftly. Daniel summoned Lillian to his office. She arrived smiling, but the moment she saw his expression, the color drained from her face. "You've been playing me," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Junior is not my son." "That's not," she started. "I've seen the reports. I know the truth. You used a fake birthmark to trick me." Her lips trembled. "Daniel, maybe I made mistakes, but that is because I don't want to lose you. I fell in love with you. Can't you see that?" Daniel's eyes were ice. "No, Lillian. You're in love with my money, not me. You've been using me from the start." She flinched as if struck, but he didn't soften. "The only reason I'm not having you arrested is because of Junior. He's innocent in this, and he doesn't deserve to see his mother in handcuffs. But hear me clearly. You will never come near me or my family again." Later, Daniel informed Madam Amanda Wilson in private. "Junior isn't mine." Amanda was stunned, but nodded. Then we cut ties quietly. Daniel didn't mention Elora, not yet. The timing had to be perfect. That night, somewhere in a run-down motel, Lillian sat opposite Mr. Adams. His clothes were disheveled, his eyes darting nervously toward the door. "You need to get lost," she told him coldly. "I'm already on the run," Adams snapped. "The police are after me for that pond incident." Lillian rolled her eyes. "I told you to get rid of her and you couldn't even carry out a simple task. The bastard is still alive." Adams's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Lillian leaned back, her mind already racing. "Fine. If the first plan failed, I'll just have to think of something better." Her lips curved into a dangerous smile. "And this time, no one will see it coming." While Olivia was living a quiet life with Elora, unaware of the storm gathering around her. Her days were simple, working at Empire Group, evenings spent helping Elora with her homework, weekends full of laughter in their small apartment. She didn't know that, as if Lillian's secret schemes weren't enough, another shadow was about to fall over her life. Rodina, Daniel's elegant ex-girlfriend and a long-time family friend, had just returned from abroad. She didn't go straight to Daniel. Instead, she sought out Madam Amanda Wilson. Over tea, Rodina produced a neat folder and slid it across the table. "I thought you should see this," she said smoothly. Inside were photographs, false statements, and forged receipts, evidence, claiming that 6 years ago, Olivia had been paid to seduce Daniel at a hotel, that her innocent law student act was nothing but a scam. "She's been playing you all along," Rodina whispered, "and she never told Daniel." Amanda's hands tightened on the papers. "So she kept my granddaughter from me, and she tricked my son." That night, Amanda stormed into Daniel's study. "You already knew," she accused, her voice trembling with anger. "You knew she was your child, and you didn't tell me." Daniel stayed calm. "I hadn't told you because I don't have all the facts yet. And I believe someone, or maybe more than one person, is trying to harm Elora. Until I know who, I need to protect her quietly." Amanda hesitated, the anger in her eyes softening just a little. "If that's the case, then yes, the child's safety is the most important thing." The seed of doubt about Olivia still lingered. The next day, Daniel went to her apartment. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Is Elora mine?" Olivia's face was a mixture of shock and confusion. She didn't know either, but then she remembered Lillian's threats and thought it best to keep her distance from him. "No, she isn't." When Daniel left her house, he didn't know what to think anymore. The DNA had confirmed Elora was his, so why was she hiding it? Doubt lingered in his mind, and that doubt hardened into resolve. The next morning, Daniel filed for full custody of Elora. In his mind, he was saving her from Olivia's struggling lifestyle, from instability, from danger. When the court summons arrived, Olivia's hands shook as she read it. Shock turned into a cold, heavy anger. After everything? With no money for an expensive lawyer, she decided to represent herself. The custody battle began. Daniel's side painted her as a struggling single mother who had hidden his daughter from him, presenting the DNA results as evidence. Olivia fought back with calm but firm arguments, her training in law giving her an edge. Then, in a quiet moment during the proceedings, the judge asked Elora if she wanted to say anything. The little girl stood, her voice steady but her eyes shining with emotion. "My mom. She's given me the best life she could. even when we didn't have much. She's the one who makes sure I'm fed, makes me laugh when I'm sad, and stays up late to help me with homework. She's my whole family. I don't need anything more, if it will make her sad." A hush fell over the courtroom. Daniel's chest tightened. For the first time, he began to wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. The courthouse was still buzzing when Rodina stepped outside into the crisp air, only to spot Lillian waiting by the parking lot. "You've been busy," Lillian said coolly. "I could say the same. I know that is why you called me back," Rodina replied, a sly smile forming. "We both want the same thing, Olivia out of Daniel's life." Lillian's eyes narrowed, but she didn't turn away. "Fine, we work together. But understand this, once she's gone, Daniel is mine." Rodina's laugh was short and cold. "We'll see about that." The uneasy alliance was sealed with a handshake neither trusted. Inside Empire Group, Daniel sat alone in his office. His mother's words echoed in his head, but so did Elora's in court. He was caught between his mother's pressure, the accusations swirling around Olivia, and the quiet but undeniable pull he felt toward her. Meanwhile, Olivia was nearing her breaking point. The long hours at work, the stress of representing herself in court, and the fear of losing Elora had worn her down. That afternoon, as she left the office kitchen with a cup of tea, her vision blurred. The mug slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. She swayed, then collapsed. Several staff members just watched, whispering and smirking. "Looks like the poor single mom can't handle the pressure," one murmured. Later at home, Elora curled up next to her on the couch, tucking a blanket around her shoulders. "Mommy," she said softly, "you're the strongest woman I know." The words hit Olivia harder than any insult ever could. She hugged her daughter tightly, fighting back tears. Daniel heard about her collapse from John the next day. Without a word, he left work early, stopping to pick up food. When he arrived at her apartment, Olivia looked startled. "What are you doing here?" "You need to eat," he said simply, setting the food down. "And you have deadlines. I'll help." They worked side by side late into the night, Daniel reviewing documents as Olivia typed. Somewhere between case notes and shared coffee, the air between them shifted, softer, warmer. When Daniel left, he didn't go home. He called his lawyer from the car. "Cancel the custody case," he said quietly. "Are you sure?" the lawyer asked. "It's almost settled." "I'm sure," Daniel replied. "Separating a child from her mother would be more than cruel, and I won't be that man." Olivia was still processing the whirlwind of the custody battle when Daniel called her to meet him at a quiet cafe. She hesitated at first, but something in his voice told her this wasn't about work or court papers. They sat in a corner booth, away from the clink of cups and hum of conversation. "I wanted to thank you," she began softly, "for dropping the custody case." Daniel's eyes held hers. "I need to know." Olivia sighed, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "That night, I was at the Starlight Hotel because I was running from trouble. My sister had gotten me into a mess and I needed to hide. I wandered into the wrong room. You were there, drugged, barely conscious. I didn't even see your face. I didn't even know it was you until last week. I only stayed to make sure you were safe. But things happened that I never planned." Daniel's breath caught. "So it really was you? You weren't sent to trap me?" She shook her head. "No, I could never do something like that." Daniel sat back stunned. No wonder he had been drawn to her from the moment he saw her. Something in him had remembered, even if his mind hadn't. "I owe you my life," he said quietly, then more firmly. "And my heart. Olivia, I have feelings for you. I have for a long time, actually. I was just too afraid to admit it. I'm sorry for the court, for doubting you, for everything." Olivia looked at him, a storm of emotions in her eyes. "I'm happy for Elora," she said slowly. "She finally has a father. But I still feel betrayed. You took me to court without even telling me about the DNA results. I can't just forget that." Daniel nodded. "I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll wait." Later that week, Daniel's quiet investigation paid off. He uncovered that the evidence his mother had been shown, the photographs, the receipts, had been falsified. The source? Rodina. Furious, Daniel confronted her in his office. "You forged evidence against Olivia," he said coldly. Rodina's eyes flashed. I belong with you, Daniel, not some poor orphan girl. I'm willing to accept the child. I'll raise her as my own. You're delusional, Daniel cut in. From this moment on, I have nothing to do with you. Rodina's face crumpled, but his expression didn't soften. She left his office broken, humiliated, and more determined than ever to strike back. That night, she made a call. The next morning, Olivia answered her phone. Meet me. We have unfinished business. When Olivia arrived at the dimly lit warehouse Rodina had named, she wasn't alone. Fred was there too. Fred's smirk told the whole story. He and Rodina had joined forces, and now, with Lillian back in the shadows, the three of them were ready to make their final move. Within the hour, Daniel's world shattered. Rodina and Fred had kidnapped both Olivia and Elora. And this time, their plan wasn't to scare them. It was to take everything from him. The warehouse smelled of oil and damp concrete. Olivia's hands were bound behind her back, Elora pressed tightly against her side. The little girl's eyes were wide, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Across from them, Lillian paced, her voice dripping with venom. You ruined everything, she spat. 6 years ago I found that gold watch. I took it and used it to impersonate you, the woman from that night. I had it all planned, Olivia. Junior was going to be the sole heir, but you... Her eyes flicked to Elora. You and your bastard daughter destroyed it all. Rodina, leaning against a crate, smirked at the confession. Olivia turned to her sharply. And what about you? What's your problem with me? I don't even know you. Rodina's smile thinned into something cold. Daniel belongs to me. I won't let some low-class orphan take him away. You're nothing, Olivia. He'll get over you. Olivia's heart pounded, but she kept her voice calm for Elora's sake. Please, don't hurt my child. She's just a little girl. Both women laughed cruelly, their voices echoing in the empty space. You should have thought of that before stepping into my world, Rodina sneered. Just then, the sound of engines roared outside. A sharp command cut through the air. Move in! The warehouse doors burst open, light flooding the room as Daniel's security team stormed in. Daniel himself was at the front, eyes blazing. He'd tracked them here using the small GPS tracker hidden inside the watch he had given Elora after learning she was his, a precaution in case she was ever in danger. Within seconds, Lillian and Rodina were overpowered and dragged away in cuffs. Their protests echoed into silence. Fred, who had been waiting near the back exit, was caught trying to flee. Daniel didn't even look at him as he gave the order. Blacklist him and send everything we have to the authorities. The evidence against Fred was overwhelming. Fraud, money laundering, and now kidnapping. His career and freedom were both over. Daniel crossed the room to Olivia and Elora, untying them himself. Are you hurt? He asked, his voice softer now. Olivia shook her head, holding Elora close. No, just shaken. Elora looked up at him, tears finally spilling over. Daddy, I was so scared. Daniel pulled them both into his arms. No one will ever hurt you again, I promise. And for the first time, Olivia believed him. With the threats gone and the shadows finally lifted, life for Olivia and Elora began to feel lighter. No more looking over their shoulders. No more whispered threats in the dark. For Daniel, the relief was matched only by gratitude. Gratitude that he hadn't lost them, and determination never to let them slip away again. One evening, Daniel invited Olivia to a quiet, candlelit restaurant in one of the city's most luxurious hotels. The view overlooked the glittering skyline, but Olivia barely noticed. Her attention was on the man across the table, dressed in a crisp suit, looking more nervous than she'd ever seen him. Halfway through dessert, he stood, came around to her side, and knelt down. Olivia, he began, his voice steady but full of emotion. I've made mistakes. Some of them hurt you deeply, and I can't take them back. But I can promise you this, if you'll let me. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. To you and to Elora. Please, marry me. Olivia's breath caught. In her mind flashed images of the man who had fought for her daughter before he even knew she was his. The man who had stood by them in Elora's school, rescued them from danger, and offered them safety without conditions. A slow smile broke across her face. Yes, she said softly. Yes, Daniel. But then she added with a spark of determination in her eyes, even if I marry you, I will still work. I want Elora to grow up seeing strength, not just wealth. Even if you're rich, I must still have my own career. Daniel's smile widened. Then we'll build it together, partners in business and in life. That night, as they left the restaurant hand in hand, the city lights seemed to shine a little brighter, as if the whole world was celebrating their new beginning. Elora would grow up with not only love and stability, but an example of strength and unity. And Daniel knew that this time, he wasn't just building an empire. He was building a family. A few days later, Daniel was ready. He had waited for the right time to set one last record straight with his mother. In her private sitting room, he placed a thick folder on the table between them. "Mother," he said quietly, "I need you to see this." Madam Amanda Wilson opened the file. Inside were signed statements, digital records and photographs, undeniable proof that Rodina had forged documents and manipulated events to turn her against Olivia. Amanda's expression shifted from disbelief to deep regret. "I was wrong," she admitted at last, her voice heavy. "I let lies cloud my judgment." She looked up at her son. "I want to meet her properly, not as your opponent, but as family." The meeting took place at the Wilson mansion. Olivia arrived cautiously, unsure what to expect. Amanda greeted her at the door herself. "I owe you an apology," she began, "for everything, the mistrust, the coldness. You've raised Elora with love and strength, and I see now you've given her something more precious than wealth, character." She handed Olivia a velvet box containing keys to a luxurious mansion. "This is yours. I registered it in your name. You can do what you see fit with it," Amanda said. Then she took out a small ornate case. Inside lay an antique diamond bracelet, its design intricate, its history centuries old. "This bracelet has been passed down to every daughter-in-law of the Wilson family, and now it's yours." Olivia is shocked, but grateful. "Thank you so much, Ma," she said finally. Elora, still a little cautious, greeted her grandmother with a polite, "Hello, madam." Amanda chuckled. "I'm your grandmother, dear, and you are every bit as sharp as your mother." Olivia smiled softly. "Thank you for accepting us." Amanda shook her head. "Thank you for giving me back my granddaughter." Days later, Daniel stood before a packed press conference hall. Cameras flashed, reporters jostled for position. With one hand holding Elora's and the other resting gently at Olivia's back, he faced the crowd. "This," he said clearly, "is my daughter. This is the woman who saved my life. And this is the future of Empire Group." Turning to Olivia with a proud smile, he added, "I present to you the First Lady of Empire Group." He looked down at Elora. "And our heir." The room erupted into thunderous applause, cameras capturing every moment. And for the first time, Olivia didn't feel like an outsider in Daniel's world. She felt like she belonged. The day of the wedding dawned golden and bright. The Wilson estate gardens were transformed into a breathtaking scene, ivory roses, golden drapes, and a path lined with candles. Guests filled the seats, murmuring in excitement. The soft hum of a string quartet floated through the air. And then, a collective gasp. Elora, radiant in a little white dress that matched her mother's, walked proudly down the aisle, holding Olivia's hand. Instead of being escorted by anyone else, Olivia had chosen her daughter. Her steps were steady, but her eyes brimmed with tears. She wasn't just walking into marriage, she was walking into peace after years of struggle, into a family she thought she might never have. Daniel stood at the altar, his gaze fixed on her like she was the only person in the world. When she reached him, he took her hands and whispered, "You're home now." The ceremony was intimate but filled with warmth. Vows were exchanged, promises spoken not just between man and woman, but between parents and child. By the time the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, there wasn't a dry eye in sight. Far away, in a stark courtroom, Rodina, Fred, and Lillian faced their sentences. Each of them received prison time for fraud, kidnapping, and attempted harm to a child. For the first time, they looked genuinely broken, regret finally replacing arrogance. Junior, now freed from the lies, was claimed by his real father, who had been searching for him for years after finally coming to his senses.
The boy's shy smile was the only light in that dark ending. A few days after the wedding, Olivia and Daniel attended a parents-teacher gathering at Elora's school. The auditorium buzzed with chatter until the principal stepped up.
Today, we announce the winner of the Best Essay Award. Please welcome Elora Wilson. The little girl walked to the stage, holding her paper with both hands. She looked at the crowd, found her parents' eyes, and began to read in a clear, steady voice. Family is not just about who you are born to. Sometimes, it's the people who choose to stand by you, even when they don't have to. My mom raised me with love, even when life was hard. She taught me that being strong doesn't mean you never cry. It means you keep going, no matter what. My dad found us after many years. He didn't know we were waiting for him, but love has a way of finding you
no matter the time or the distance. Family is unity. It's helping each other, forgiving each other, and protecting each other. I believe what is meant for you will always find you, and I am happy it found me. When she finished, the auditorium erupted in applause. Teachers smiled, parents whispered in admiration. Olivia wiped at her eyes, and Daniel squeezed her hand. As they walked to the stage together, the three of them side by side, it wasn't just about winning an award. It was about surviving every trial, overcoming every lie, and ending up stronger, closer, and more united than ever. In that moment, the future didn't feel like something they had to chase. It was already here, a family that had been torn apart before it even began, now whole again, ready to face whatever came next.